Crystal Palace in the news in more ways than one at the moment, Alex. Jean-Phillipe Mateta, what's going on?
Well, it's another player who wants away from Selhurst Park, and it does seem to be a case of, with the last one out, please switch off the lights at the moment, doesn't it? When you think about Mark Gay is left, obviously Eze sold to Arsenal in the summer.
How long has he got in his contract, Crookie?
He's off. Yeah, he is under contract, and that expires in 2027. But you know what it's like, Danny. It's difficult to keep an unhappy player. There's interest from Juventus, which I think quite appeals to Mateta, the chance to go and play in the Champions League. Aston Villa as well have been mentioned in the last 24 hours or so as their deal for Tammy Abraham hits a few stumbling blocks. I think a big issue here is that Mateta is not on massive money by Premier League terms at Crystal Palace, and I think he feels that by joining another team, he can pretty much double his pay and obviously go and achieve those aspirations to play in a top-tier European competition in the case of Juventus. So I don't think he's put a transfer request as such, but I think his camp have made it pretty clear to Steve Parish and the Palace hierarchy that he wants out.
Oh, Simon, I mean, what can you say to events at Crystal Palace?
I don't think it's any more of the last person here to have a lights out any more than it would be for Bournemouth, in terms of the players that they have had potentially leave the club and gone to bigger football clubs, and the potential that their manager may well leave at the end of the season. It's the difficulty. It's something that I don't fundamentally agree with what Martin Samuel said the other day about the challenges that await Crystal Palace as a result of winning the FA Cup. But it does lean into that the clubs that are trying to compete and win competitions that don't have the legacy, heritage and the turnover and the huge ownership models behind them to be able to bankroll whatever they feel like and having to comply with PSR as they should, are in a real difficult situation because everyone sees the vision of a manager or a player when it arrives. And Crystal Palace brought Oliver Glasner in. I think he came with a reputation, but Palace got him. Mateta couldn't hit a cow's backside with a banjo a couple of years ago.
No, he couldn't.
And now all of a sudden, Glasner's got him going again. So he might want to check his neck a little bit. But Eze was bought by, the recruitment processes of Dougie Freedman. They brought good players in. And a lot of what Palace have done have built players up to a level. And of course, as always is the case, as I said yesterday, it goes back to when Kenny Sampson was flying as a left back for England. Arsenal came along and took him and part exchanged Clive Allen for him. And these situations, and over the years, the smaller clubs, the lesser than clubs, are always going to be subject to either their managers or their players being taken. And the only job they can have, and the best job that the owner of that particular club can do, and he does it most of the time, is rinse out as much as he possibly can from the deal and look for that to be reinvested alongside a manager that will develop, and the next manager will come along and develop Palace.
They're not on their own, are they? You got Brighton, you got Brentford.
But it's always been the same. It was back in the team when Palace were the team of the 80s and Venables was coming up.
Yeah.
And as soon as Venables didn't get his own way in 1980, off he went to Queen's Park Rangers.
Sure. Alex Crook joined us earlier on in the show, and we were talking about the talk of Jean-Phillipe Mateta getting to the stage that he wants out of Crystal Palace. And of course, out of Crystal Palace in recent times, we've seen more than a few players now go. And Mateta, seemingly, is the latest one. He's not quite at the stage, we understand, that this lunchtime of slapping in a transfer request. But it's now being reported that the same Jean-Phillipe Mateta has now told Crystal Palace that he wants to leave the club this month. So he's made it fairly clear that he wants out, and he wants out now. Simon, if you're at the top of the house at Crystal Palace, and I'm pretty sure I know what's coming here, what would you say to Monsieur Mateta and his agent?
I'd say it's very nice for you. But how does that provide a solution to my particular problem, which is I need a centre forward? And given the fact we've invested in you and given you an opportunity, and for the first 18 months of your contract, you were bleeding useless, I think there's a little bit of quid pro quo here. I know that if he gets up, they all get up, there'll be anarchy, your manager's going, but you don't get to follow that. So you're a contracted player. You've got another 18 months on your contract. Unless you provide me with a solution to your problem, because you're the one problem, not me, I'm happy with you staying here. And if we want to talk again in the summer, we'll talk again in the summer. And if you're not happy with that, then you have the problem. Provide me with my solution then. Because my solution is I will want top money for you and I want a replacement. So off you go with your little agent and come back with a load of solutions.
What would tickle your fancy to get him gone? Amount?
As much as I could possibly get in a replacement that was ready-made, lined up. Because I've got a whole backdrop of problems. Parish has got a whole... Now, the architects of their own downfall. They've created this situation. True. They should have pushed on. They had the money to do it. It's not my job to tell Palace how to spend things, given my ownership of it. But they've got no PSR compliance. They've ridden on the coattails of opportunity for too long now in terms of they've had the PSR bandwidth. You can't bring in top managers and not give them support. No. I would always be in the case of trying to defend an owner, and I'm not going against Parish because of my history with him, The Glasner situation, I don't go with Glasner's outburst. I think it's silly. I think he hurts himself as much as anyone else. But
as in perspective,
they could have arrested some of this. They could have dealt with some of this. They could have at least held Glasner's feet to the fire and said, "Okay, we'll back you to a certain degree." They haven't backed him. They've sold whatever money he's got. It's because they've sold. They haven't spent any more.
Mateta's agent, Simon, will say, "Well, Semenyo's gone, Gehi's gone.
I don't care what they've done.
My guy wants to go to Juventus,
and that's fine. And Semenyo's gone because Bournemouth were prepared to do it. And if you want to bring me 65 million quid for
he
your
had a clause.
And he's got a release clause. If you've got a release clause in your contract, then you don't even need to knock on my door, do you? Go get me the number that releases him, and we'll talk about it, won't we? But if you haven't got a release clause, which potentially you haven't, shut up and come back with a solution to your problem.
I mean, players leaving clubs. Players are leaving clubs at this time.
But there's a potential,
and he will hint to that. High-profile players.
Yeah, well, I like him as a player, but he's not well beat. He's done well. He's a streaky player, and he's done well for Glasner. Before that, he wasn't doing particularly well for Roy Hodgson. And this idea that he suddenly arrived. I mean, to some extent, the ridicule that Wilf Zaha got for laughing at him, saying he wanted to be in the French team when he couldn't get him to the lineup of Crystal Palace, was actually right, because he was miles away from it. And now perhaps he's got illusions of grandeur. And if Juventus want to buy him, up you come then and tell me what money you've got, and then maybe I'll discuss it with you. And if it gives me enough time, which it possibly does, to bring in a replacement, then Glasner can have another turn. But he's got no reason to have a turn now, is it? Because he's going anyway.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, this is why I'm thinking. I'm thinking specifically about this agent and how he'd go about it, trying to procure a move for his client, Jean-Phillipe Mateta, and he can allude to just the very situation you just described, Simon. Well, the manager has said he's out of there.
But he will do. Of course he will do. But that doesn't alter the position that ultimately the player's under contract. So the agent can do whatever he feels like. He can draw as many Venn diagrams and as many images as he wants to present as to the reasons why his player wants to leave. And that's fantastic. It's not new information. We can all see that. But the bottom line is he doesn't leave unless there's a solution provided to Crystal Palace. Now, it might be and that Parish and his cohorts are prepared to cash in on Mateta. It might be that they might be relaxed about it. They won't like the optics of it, because the optics will be precisely as we're playing it, which is it's all going on at Palace. They're losing their manager, they're losing their players, they're losing their status, they've lost their FA Cup. It's all going wrong. It's not. It's a moment in time. And I know that people like Martin Samuel are forecasting the ultimate demise of Crystal Palace. The next stop is apparently the Championship, because they've won the FA Cup, because all their players will now be leaving and their manager will leave, and the next stop is the Championship, which is a load of old nonsense.
But it's not all going wrong, but it has unravelled, it's fair to say.
But there's no surprise here.
I mean, the Palace board can hardly say, right, same board Mateta. Now, let's have a word with Oliver Glasner. Well, not much point really on that score, is there?
They're not going to talk to Oliver Glasner about it. Oliver Glasner's just going to do his job for 4 months and off he goes to the pastures anew. Same board that put him in. So you've got to give credit for the fact they brought Glasner in. He got you an FA Cup. Managers leave. And you've kept the team in the Premier League for 13 years. Like I said the other day, as much as Palace fans might not want to agree with this, it's a revelation for a club like Palace to be in the Premier League for 13 years. They've stabilised it as a Premier League football club. Pinch yourselves. Yeah. Don't lose context of where you are. There's also another question that should be asked is, why don't Blitzer and Harris, and by the way, Woody Johnson, why aren't they ponying up more money? Why isn't there a new ambition? Textor was right in what he said last summer. He might have gone about things in a slightly better way, but he was right to call out the ambition of Parish and Parish's control over everything.